Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're diving into the story of Jeff German
A veteran investigative journalist.
in Las Vegas.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of a story that reads like a
Yes.
crime thriller.
Absolutely.
He spent decades shining a light
Uh,
on some of the darkest corners
Yeah.
of the city,
Yeah.
and then he becomes a victim of the very shadows that he's exposing.
Right. It's really tragic, what happened to him, and it raises a lot of questions about. I mean, obviously, it's a true crime story, but it also raises questions about the role of investigative journalism, the dangers of holding power accountable. What happens when you speak truth to power.
Yeah.
So we're going to be taking a look at court documents, firsthand accounts from German's colleagues, and there's actually audio from a podcast that he was involved in.
Okay, so let's start with who Jeff German was. I mean, he was a fixture at the Las Vegas Review-Journal like for 40 years.
Yeah, a
Uh,
long time.
and he was known for really pursuing the truth. He wasn't after the national headlines or anything. He was digging deep into like the underbelly
Yeah, his own city.
of his own city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was really a reporter's reporter, someone who just lived and breathed his work.
Right.
Very fearless, taking on organized crime, exposing corruption, giving a voice to people who had been silenced. And, he had this kind of obsessive drive. You know how some people are really into like collecting stamps or something like that?
Right.
He was really into finding the truth no matter who he was investigating, how powerful they were.
Yeah, and he had a way of finding these like dramatic, almost cinematic stories
Yeah.
right in his own backyard.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, like Tony Spilotro,
Oh, yeah.
this notorious mob enforcer.
Right.
If you've seen the movie Casino,
Right.
think Joe Pesci.
Yeah.
Like that level of ruthlessness.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Spilotro was like a major player in the mob's hold on Vegas. And German's reporting, really challenged that power. And he even had his tires slashed. He faced other kinds of intimidation. But, it never deterred him. He actually talked about some of his experiences on a podcast called Mobbed Up. And he described Spilotro as having like the coldest eyes I've ever seen.
Wow. It's one thing to like stare down the barrel of a gun, so to speak, but it's another thing to have someone looking at you like that.
Right, right.
And you really get a sense of his courage, and his commitment to the story.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just the mob. I mean, German also was crucial in the Susan Winters case.
Yes.
It was initially ruled a suicide.
Yeah.
But his reporting raised all these doubts, and it eventually led to her husband being convicted of manslaughter.
Yeah. I think that case is a perfect example of German's refusal to just accept the easy answer. He dug deeper, he questioned the official narrative, and ultimately he helped bring justice to this grieving family. Yeah.
And that dedication to finding the truth is a thread that runs through his whole career.
It's so fascinating how he could go from these, like high stakes crime stories to what you would consider a pretty mundane world of local politics.
Right.
But as we'll see, even the most ordinary sounding situations can hold these dark secrets.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that brings us to the investigation that ultimately would lead to German's death, the Clark County Public Administrator's Office, led by Robert Tells.
Yeah.
Now, you may be asking yourself, like, what exactly does a public administrator do?
Right.
It's not the most glamorous job.
It's not like, being on a TV show or something.
Yeah.
It's basically they manage the estates of people who die without a will or family to take care of things.
Right.
So it's a position of significant trust.
Yeah.
You're dealing with sensitive financial matters, vulnerable individuals.
Right.
So when allegations of bullying and harassment, favoritism come out against this guy, Tells. German sees a story. There's something there. Yeah. And it wasn't just a disgruntled employee. Like 4 women from Teller's office came to German for help.
Yeah. Desperate for help.
Yeah.
They accused him of creating just a toxic work environment filled with emotional stress, intimidation. They felt trapped, powerless. They were afraid if they spoke out, they'd be retaliated against.
Yeah. And one woman, Jessica, even claimed that Teller's bullying drove her to actually contemplate suicide.
Yeah.
She described feeling so isolated and hopeless, she thought about taking her own life in the office vault, where Tells would be sure to find her body.
Wow.
It's a pretty chilling detail that really reveals the extent of this alleged abuse.
Yeah, and the impact it had on these women. I mean, they really saw German as their only hope, that he was the one person who might be able to help them.
Right. And German, he took their story seriously. He investigated the claims.
He did what he always did.
Yeah, and he discovered even more troubling details.
Right. The women believed that Tellus was having an affair with a subordinate named Roberta, and that she was using this relationship to kind of gain influence within the office.
Right.
And they were so determined to expose this alleged affair that they actually went to some extraordinary lengths to gather evidence.
Really?
Yeah, they secretly filmed Tellus and Roberta together in a parking garage.
It sounds like something out of a spy movie.
It really does.
These women were risking their careers, their reputations, to expose what they saw as just a complete abuse of power.
Yeah.
They turned to German because they knew his reputation, that he was the one who would take on these powerful figures.
Absolutely. That's exactly what he did. He confronted Roberta with these allegations. She denied any wrongdoing, but he had enough to publish an article. He detailed the turmoil within the public administrator's office, including this alleged affair. And this was in May of 2022, and it had some immediate repercussions for Tellus.
Yeah.
Yeah, the county launched an investigation, and he ended up losing his bid for re-election.
Oh, wow.
But German wasn't done. No. He was working on a follow-up story when his life was tragically cut short.
Wow. Yeah. So German's murder on September 2nd, 2022, it really sent shockwaves through Las Vegas. I mean, he was found stabbed to death outside his home, 7 stab wounds.
Oh, my goodness.
4 to the neck. Just brutal, a really personal attack. And, suspicion immediately fell on Robert Tellus.
I mean, it's just chilling to think that someone would resort to violence like that
Right.
just to silence a reporter. But it wasn't just the articles, right? I mean, Tellus had this history of kind of volatile behavior. Like there was that arrest for domestic battery and resisting arrest.
Right. And that incident was actually captured on police body cam footage. And it showed a really troubling side of Tellus. Intoxicated, belligerent, seemed to think he was above the law.
Yeah.
It's the kind of behavior that makes you think, yeah, this guy could easily lash out if he felt challenged.
And then there were the tweets. I mean, Tellus had publicly lashed out at German online, accusing him of writing these smear pieces. I mean, he even said things like, he hoped German would crawl into a hole and die. Yeah, those tweets weren't just like angry rants. They were a glimpse into Tellus's state of mind. He clearly felt wronged by German's reporting. He blamed him for his downfall. And you could just sense this deep resentment.
Right.
And that kind of resentment can easily escalate into something dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But the Review Journal team, they were determined to honor German's legacy. They knew they couldn't rely on just speculation or circumstantial evidence. They needed hard proof
Right.
to connect Tellus to this crime.
It's tough, They're grieving the loss of their colleague, but they also have to pick up his investigation.
Yeah.
They understood the weight of the situation, the need to be meticulous, be thorough, both for German and for the integrity of their reporting.
So they started with what they had,
Mm.
these 2 grainy surveillance photos that the police released.
Right.
The suspect was wearing what seemed like this really obvious disguise, this
Yeah.
wide-brimmed straw hat, and orange reflective vest and pants, but I don't know.
Well, think about the context of Las Vegas. The scorching sun, all the construction work, landscaping crews. That kind of attire could actually help you blend in.
That's true.
It's almost like he was trying to look ordinary.
Right. But there was one thing the outfit couldn't hide, this distinctive gait of the suspect, like a slight limp and a drag on one foot. And that's where Kevin Cannon, a photographer at the Review Journal, he made this crucial connection. He remembered filming Tellus during a previous interview with German at his office.
Yeah, it's amazing how these seemingly insignificant details become these really important clues in an investigation. Cannon, he had a keen eye. He noticed the subtle nuance of movement, recognized that walk. He pulled up the footage, and the similarities were just striking.
Wow.
Same limp, same drag.
So it was definitely him.
Well, they needed more than just this visual connection. The police then released another piece of the puzzle. A photo of the suspect's vehicle, this maroon Yukon Denali. And this is where the Review Journal team, they really get resourceful. They didn't just wait for the police to make the next move. They use these tools that we all have access to
Right.
to connect the dots.
Like what?
Well, David Ferrara, he's the assistant city editor, he had this idea. He just typed Telly's home address into Google Earth,
Oh, wow.
and there it was, maroon Yukon Denali,
Yeah.
parked in the driveway, a perfect match to the vehicle in the police photo.
It seems so simple, but so effective.
Right. It's a reminder that the most powerful tools for investigative journalism are sometimes right in front of us. A satellite image, a public database, these can be just as valuable as any confidential source.
So what did they do? I mean, they had this new information.
Well, the Review-Journal, they dispatched reporters and photographers to Telly's house, but they were cautious.
Yeah, of course.
They knew they were dealing with someone potentially dangerous, so they gave them very specific instructions. Observe only. Don't engage.
Right.
Imagine the tension, you know? The adrenaline. Watching Telly's from a distance, knowing they are on the verge of breaking this major story, but also having to prioritize their own safety.
I can't even imagine.
It's a tough balance, between pursuing the truth and protecting yourself.
Yeah.
But then they got it.
Got what?
The image they needed. Telly's washing his maroon Yukon Denali on this scorching 110-degree day.
He's trying to get rid of evidence.
Right. It's almost like he was trying to scrub away any trace of his alleged crime.
Wow.
Like this desperate attempt to cleanse himself of guilt.
It's a powerful image. So what happened next?
Well, the Review-Journal knew they had to be careful. They couldn't just publish their findings without confirmation from official sources, but they were pretty confident an arrest was imminent. And sure enough, they started seeing unmarked police cars appearing outside Telly's house.
Oh, wow.
The tension was building with every passing moment. And then, September 7th, just 5 days after German's murder, the police executed a search warrant on Telly's home. And while he was being questioned, detectives collected a DNA sample. The results were undeniable. Tell's DNA was found under German's fingernails.
Wow. That's it, right?
That's the smoking gun. The irrefutable evidence linking Tell's directly to the crime scene.
It's a chilling detail, but it also sounds like German, even in his final moments, fought back, ensured that his killer wouldn't get away with it.
Yeah. I mean, the DNA match sealed Tell's fate. The police descended on his house again, this time to make an arrest, but the drama didn't end there.
Really? What happened?
The Review-Journal team, they were listening in on the police scanner, and they heard this chilling code. 405 comments.
What does that mean?
It indicates a possible suicide threat. The situation had escalated into a hostage standoff. A race against time to apprehend this suspect who might be willing to harm himself. SWAT was called in. The tension was just palpable. Everyone's waiting, hoping for a peaceful resolution. And finally, after hours of negotiation, Tellis was taken into custody. But not before inflicting injuries on himself.
Oh, my God.
It was a desperate act, a final act of defiance from a man who's cornered. And facing the consequences of his alleged actions, Kevin Cannon, the Review-Journal photographer, the one who had played such a crucial role in the investigation, he captured the defining image of that day. Tellis being wheeled out on a stretcher, his face bloodied, his defiance broken.
That's incredible. So they got him.
Yeah, they got him. And that photo, it was splashed across the front page of the Review-Journal. It became a symbol of justice, or a testament to the power of investigative journalism, to expose the truth, even in the face of this horrific tragedy.
But even after his death, it seems like German's work continued to have this impact.
Oh, absolutely.
The Review-Journal, they didn't just publish his unfinished stories, right?
Right.
They actually fought this legal battle to protect his sources.
Yeah. They argued that revealing their identities could put them in danger. And, this legal battle wasn't just about this one case. It was about the very principles of investigative journalism. German had built his career on earning the trust of his sources.
Right.
Often people who were risking a lot to expose wrongdoing.
It makes you realize how important that relationship between a journalist and a source is.
Yeah.
It's built on this confidentiality.
It's sacred. Yeah.
Without it, these kinds of investigations just wouldn't be possible.
Exactly. And the courts recognize that.
He did.
Yeah. The Nevada Supreme Court ruled in favor of the Review-Journal. And this ruling established what's now known as the German rule.
Okay, so what does that mean? What is the German rule?
Well, it basically sets a legal precedent that protects the confidentiality of journalists' sources even after the journalist's death.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a landmark decision, really strengthens press freedom, and ensures that whistleblowers can feel confident coming forward without fear that their identities will be revealed, even in the most extreme circumstances.
It's amazing. Talk about a fitting tribute to German's legacy.
Yeah, exactly.
But I imagine in the middle of all these legal victories and the pursuit of justice, there were these 4 women.
Right.
The ones who first brought their stories to German. They must have been grappling with just a profound sense of loss and guilt.
Yeah. It's impossible to imagine what they must have gone through. They had found a champion in German. He believed their story. He amplified their voices.
Right.
And now he's gone, murdered for exposing the very truth they had risked so much to reveal.
It's heartbreaking. Did they ever speak out?
They attended nearly every hearing. their faces just reflecting their grief, but also their determination to see this case through to the end. They knew that German had risked his life for them, and they were determined to honor his memory by seeking justice.
It's powerful. So what about Tellus? I mean, he was in jail awaiting trial, right?
Yeah, and he gave this jailhouse interview where he denied killing German, claiming he was framed, that the evidence was planted.
Of course he did.
And he even tried to discredit the women's allegations, just dismiss their accounts as like alleged opinion.
It's always the same, isn't it? Deny, deflect, discredit.
Yeah. But in this case, I mean, the evidence was overwhelming. The surveillance footage, the DNA, the incriminating items found in his home.
It all pointed to him.
Exactly.
You know, the story of Jeff German is tragic, no doubt. It's a stark reminder of the risks that investigative journalists take every day. But it's also a story of resilience. A newsroom coming together in grief, in determination.
Absolutely.
A whole community rallying behind a fallen hero.
And it's a story that really highlights how vital a free and independent press is. I mean, it holds those in power accountable. It exposes corruption, gives a voice to those who might otherwise be silenced. German's life and work are just a reminder that truth matters, and there are people out there who are willing to fight for it, even when the cost is so incredibly high.
Yeah. So what does this mean for us? I mean, for those of us who depend on journalists to shine a light on the things that are happening?
Well, I think it reminds us that investigative journalism is essential to a functioning democracy. It holds those in power accountable, exposes corruption, gives a voice to the voiceless. But it's also a dangerous profession. It takes courage, integrity, a deep commitment to the truth.
Yeah, and Jeff German, he embodied all of those things. I mean, his work made a real difference, and his legacy is going to continue to inspire journalists for years to come.
Absolutely. And it's a legacy that we as citizens have a responsibility to protect. By supporting investigative journalism, by demanding transparency and accountability from our leaders, we can honor the work of people like Jeff German and make sure that the truth continues to be told.
That's a great point. If you've been moved by this deep dive into the life and death of Jeff German, we encourage you to learn more. Check out those 48 Hours podcast episodes. They go even deeper into the case. And read the articles that German and his colleagues wrote. The words that exposed the truth and ultimately cost him his life.
Yeah, and remember the importance of a free press and the journalists who risk everything to bring us the truth. Their work matters, their stories matter, and we should never forget their sacrifices.
Well said. And that wraps up another deep dive. Thanks for listening, everyone.
See you next time.